Tell me about a time you participated in pair programming introduction. This is a common behavioral interview question for software developers, backend developers, full-stack developers, senior developers, and Agile teams. Interviewers ask this question to understand: call, how you collaborate while coding. Call, how you communicate technical ideas. Call, how you share ownership of code. Call, how you give and receive feedback. Call, how you solve problems together. Call, how you improve code quality. Call, how you learn from teammates and help others learn. This question is especially important for Java developers, backend developers, Spring Boot developers, full-stack developers, junior software developers, senior software developers, Agile teams, teams using TDD or XP practices. The best way to answer this question is by using the STAR method. STAR means S. Situation, explain the background. T. Task, explain your responsibility. A. Action, explain what you personally did. R. Result, explain the final outcome. A good interview answer usually spends 10% situation, 10% task, 60% action, 20% result. The most important part is the action section, because interviewers want to understand how you participated in the pair programming session, how you communicated, and how the work improved. Question: tell me about a time you participated in pair programming. Example 1. Pair programming on a Spring Boot API situation. In one sprint, our team needed to build a new Spring Boot REST API for a customer search feature. The API required filters, pagination, sorting, validation, error handling, and integration tests. Task: I participated in pair programming with another developer to design and implement the API efficiently while keeping the code clean and testable. Action: we started by reviewing the story and acceptance criteria together. Then, we agreed on the API contract. We discussed endpoint URL, request parameters, response DTO, pagination rules, sorting rules, validation rules, error response format, test scenarios. During the pair programming session, we used driver and navigator roles. One person typed the code, while the other reviewed the direction, asked questions, and watched for edge cases. We switched roles during the session, so both of us stayed involved. I helped design the service layer logic and validation roles. My teammate helped review the repository query and integration test cases. We also wrote tests while developing the feature. The tests covered k-valid search, k-invalid filter, k-invalid sort field, k-empty result, k-pagination limit, k-unauthorized access. Result: the API was completed within the sprint. Because we paired early, the code review had fewer comments. QA testing was smoother because we had already discussed edge cases and added test coverage. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows CC, pair programming experience, CC, API design, CC, driver and navigator roles, CC, collaboration, CC, clean backend development. Example 2. Pair programming to debug a production issue situation. In one production system, an API was failing intermittently. The issue was difficult because it happened only for certain request payloads. Task: I paired with another developer to reproduce the issue, identify the root cause, and fix it safely. Action: we started by reviewing logs and failed request examples. We compared failed and successful requests. We noticed that failed requests had one optional field missing. During the pair programming session, one of us reproduced the issue locally, while the other reviewed the code path. We traced the flow through controller, request DTO, validation logic, service layer, database call, error handling. We found that the service logic assumed the optional field was always present. I suggested adding null safe handling and clear validation behavior. My teammate helped write the regression tests. We added tests for optional field present, optional field missing, invalid request, valid request, existing behavior. We also reviewed the error message to make sure it was clear and safe. Result: the production bug was fixed quickly. The regression test prevented the same issue from returning. Pairing helped us find the root cause faster because one person coded while the other challenged assumptions and watched the flow. Why this answer works. This answer is good because it shows: check production debugging, pair problem solving, root cause analysis, regression testing, safe fix, teamwork under pressure. Example 3. Pair programming with a junior developer situation. In one sprint, a junior developer was assigned to implement a backend validation feature. They understood the requirement, but were unsure how to structure validation and tests in the project. Task: I paired with them to help deliver the feature while also helping them learn the project's coding standards. Action: I first asked them to explain their understanding of the requirement. Then, we reviewed an existing validation example in the codebase. During pairing, I encouraged them to be the driver for most of the session. They wrote the code, and I acted as the navigator. I asked guiding questions such as, where should this validation live? Should this be controller validation or service layer validation? What should the error response look like? What edge cases should we test? We implemented click request DTO validation, service layer business validation, field level error response, unit tests, integration tests. I avoided taking over the keyboard unless they were completely blocked. Result: the junior developer completed the feature successfully. They became more confident with the codebase and validation patterns. The final code followed team standards and had good test coverage. Why this answer works. This answer is strong because it shows C. Mentoring, C. Pair programming, C. Helping without taking over, C. Teaching through questions, C. Test coverage, C. Team growth. Example 4. Pair programming on Kafka consumer logic situation. In one microservices project, we needed to implement a Kafka consumer for customer update events. The consumer had to handle duplicate messages, retries, invalid payloads, and downstream failures. Task: I paired with another developer to design and implement the consumer logic reliably. Action: we started by reviewing the event payload and business requirement. We discussed important event processing questions. Check: what happens if the same message is received twice? Check: what happens if the payload is invalid? Check: what happens if the downstream service is unavailable? Check: which failure should be retried? Check: which failure should go to a dead letter queue? Check: what should be logged for troubleshooting? During pairing, one of us wrote the consumer code while the other reviewed the logic and failure scenarios. We added event validation, idempotency check, retry handling, dead letter queue logic, structured logging, correlation ID, unit tests, integration style tests. We also tested duplicate messages and invalid messages to make sure the consumer behaved safely. Result: the Kafka consumer was delivered successfully. It handled retries, duplicates, and invalid messages more reliably. Pair programming helped us catch edge cases early before QA testing. Why this answer works. This answer is good because it shows Kafka experience, event-driven development, reliability thinking, pair programming, idempotency, DLQ and retry handling. Example 5. Pair programming during test-driven development situation. In one project, we were implementing a business rule with several edge cases. The team wanted to use a test-first approach because the logic was complex and important. Task: I participated in pair programming with another developer using a TDD-style workflow. Action: we started by writing the expected behavior as test cases before implementing the logic. The test cases covered check valid request, missing required field, invalid status, duplicate business key, unauthorized user, edge case input, expected error response. One person wrote the failing test first. Then, the other person implemented the minimum code required to pass the test. After each test passed, we refactored the code to improve readability. We kept switching roles between driver and navigator. I focused on identifying edge cases and keeping the business logic simple. My teammate focused on making the tests clear and maintainable. Result: the business rule was implemented with strong test coverage. The code was easier to refactor because tests protected the behavior. The pair programming session helped us avoid misunderstandings about the business rules. Why this answer works. This answer is strong because it shows TDD mindset, pair programming discipline, edge case thinking, refactoring safety, test coverage, quality focus. Example 6. Pair programming on refactoring a large service class situation. In one Spring Boot application, a service class had grown too large. It contained validation, business logic, database access, mapping, and external API calls in one place. Task: I paired with another developer to refactor the class safely without changing existing behavior. Action: before changing code, we reviewed the existing behavior and test coverage. We identified responsibilities that could be separated. CUC: validation, DTO mapping, business orchestration, database access, external service client, error handling. During the pairing session, we refactored incrementally. First, we moved mapping logic into a mapper. Then we moved validation logic into a validator. Then we separated external API calls into a client class. After each step, we ran tests to confirm behavior had not changed. When we found missing test coverage, we added tests before refactoring more. Result: the service class became smaller and easier to understand. The refactor was safe because we tested after each step. Pair programming helped reduce risk because 2 developers reviewed each design decision in real time. Why this answer works. This answer is good because it shows safe refactoring, pair programming, separation of concerns, test-first safety, maintainability improvement, shared ownership. Example 7. Pair programming on frontend and backend integration situation. In one full-stack project, the frontend needed to integrate with a new backend API. There was confusion about response fields, validation errors, and empty state behavior. Task: I paired with a frontend developer to align the frontend and backend integration. Action: we started by reviewing the UI screen and the backend API response. We confirmed: check required response fields, check optional response fields, check loading state, empty result state, check validation error format, check unauthorized error format, check pagination behavior. I updated the backend response DTO to match the UI needs. The front-end developer updated the component to handle success, error, and empty states. During pairing, we tested the API and UI together. We used sample responses for successful response, validation error, unauthorized access, empty result, server error. When we found that one error message was too generic, I improved the backend error response. Result: the integration was completed smoothly. There were fewer back-and-forth changes because we worked together directly. The frontend handled API responses more consistently. Why this answer works. This answer is strong because it shows key front-end-back-end collaboration, check pair programming across roles, API contract alignment, error handling, user experience awareness, delivery efficiency. Example 8. Pair programming to onboard a new team member situation. A new developer joined the team and needed to learn a large existing codebase. Their first task was to make a small back-end change, but the project structure was unfamiliar. Task: I paired with them to help them understand the codebase and complete their first task confidently. Action: I started by walking them through the project structure. We reviewed controller layer, service layer, repository layer, DTOs, validation, exception handling, tests, local run configuration. Then we paired on their first small change. I let them drive while I navigated. When they were unsure, I explained the reason behind the project pattern. We also ran the tests together and created a pull request. During the PR, I explained the review process and how to respond to comments. Result: the new developer completed their first task successfully. They became more comfortable with the codebase. Pair programming helped reduce onboarding time and gave them confidence to take the next task independently. Why this answer works? This answer is good because it shows: check, onboarding support, pair programming, mentoring, patience, knowledge sharing, team productivity. Best short answer version. If you need a short interview answer, you can say, in one sprint, I participated in pair programming with another developer to build a Spring Boot customer search API. The API needed filters, pagination, sorting, validation, error handling, and test coverage. We started by reviewing the story and agreeing on the API contract, request parameters, response DTO, validation rules, and test scenarios. During the session, we used driver and navigator roles. One person wrote the code while the other reviewed the direction, asked questions, and watched for edge cases. We switched roles during the session. I worked on the service layer logic and validation, while my teammate helped with the repository query and integration tests. We added tests for valid search, invalid filters, invalid sorting, empty results, pagination limits, and unauthorized access. As a result, the API was completed within the sprint. The code review had fewer comments, and QA testing was smoother because edge cases were handled early. Common mistakes to avoid. 1. Saying only, we coded together. Bad answer. We did pair programming and completed the task. Better answer. Explain what you worked on, how you used driver and navigator roles, how you communicated, and what improved. 2. Taking all the credit. Bad answer. I guided the other developer and solved everything. Better answer. We shared ownership, switched roles, discussed trade-offs, and improved the solution together. 3. No technical detail. Bad answer. We worked on a feature. Better answer. Mention API design, validation, Kafka, debugging, testing, refactoring, or frontend backend integration. 4. Ignoring communication. Bad answer. One person typed and the other watched. Better answer. The navigator reviewed direction, asked questions, suggested edge cases, and helped keep the design clean. 5. No result. Bad answer. It was a good experience. Better answer. The feature was delivered faster, QA found fewer issues, and code review had fewer comments. Best practices for answering this question. Use the STAR method. Explain why pair programming was useful. Mention driver and navigator roles. Show that both developers contributed. Explain how you communicated. Mention technical details. Mention testing. Mention code quality. Mention learning or knowledge sharing. End with a clear result. What interviewers are looking for. Interviewers want to see whether you can collaborate while coding, communicate clearly, give and receive feedback, share ownership, solve problems with another developer, support learning, improve code quality, handle different opinions respectfully, work well in Agile or XP-style environments. For senior roles, they also want to see mentoring through pairing, technical leadership, quality improvement, onboarding support, refactoring guidance, team productivity improvement, knowledge sharing. Strong words to use in your answer. You can use words like jock, paired, collaborated, navigated, drove, reviewed, discussed, switched roles, validated, tested, refactored, shared ownership, learned, mentored, improved quality. Example: I participated in pair programming by switching between driver and navigator roles, discussing design choices in real time, identifying edge cases, writing tests together, and improving code quality before the pull request. Good pair programming topics you can use. Depending on your experience, you can talk about building a Spring Boot API, debugging a production issue, mentoring a junior developer, Kafka consumer implementation, TDD pair programming. Calc, refactoring a large service class. Calc, front-end backend integration. Calc, onboarding a new developer. Calc, writing unit tests together. Calc, resolving a complex bug. Calc, improving validation. Logic, implementing security checks, reviewing API contract, writing integration tests, resolving merge conflict together. Final summary. Tell me about a time you participated in pair programming is an important interview question because many Agile teams value collaboration, shared ownership, and continuous feedback. The best answer should include what you worked on, why pair programming was useful, your responsibility, how you used driver and navigator roles, how you communicated, what technical problem you solved, what tests you added, what the result was, what you learned. Good examples include Spring Boot API development, production debugging, mentoring junior developer, Kafka consumer logic, TDD workflow, refactoring, front-end, back-end integration, onboarding. The strongest answers show collaboration, communication, shared ownership, technical contribution, and improved quality.